So Ocean Friends is about a character named Ella, who is an introvert who absolutely has a mad passion for music, but she kind of lives in her own little bubble and she keeps to herself until that bubble gets burst when she meets Cheeky, a outgoing, bubbly, adventurous character who's completely opposite to Ella, and the two quickly become friends. And Cheeky then takes her on an adventure that changes Ella forever. My main role was to direct the story element of the animation and help the animators understand, like, this expression needs to show this emotion to portray this part of the story. I had a huge role, I feel, in, helping develop the story concept, making sure that we have certain setups and certain payoffs, and that certain payoffs will not necessarily be paid off in the first video, but will be revealed in the fourth video. Do you know what I mean? But it needs to be set up in that first video because Babe doesn't really know those kind of setups, and I do. I kind of was making sure through the script that we have the character's ghost, which is, their past trauma that is kind of holding them back, and we had to make sure that, we have our inciting moment, what changes and pushes the character into motion, there's so many elements. Technically, there's 22 steps, but with Ocean Friends, I try to keep it as succinct as possible, and any way that we could use it as a double turning point and stuff like that, we would. And yeah, you just got to make sure you also, just because it's a part one series, it still has to have some kind of resolution, You can't just go to be continued and that's it. It's like we still need to know what happened in the end, even if it's a tragedy or if it's a good thing, something has happened, even if it is to be continued. Think about like TV series, it's to be continued, but there's a resolution of that one topic before we go to the next. So that's kind of what happened with our kind of concepts. And I just made sure that all those elements were there that we could, use to make sure that it's not just a beginning, middle, end kind of typical teenage story that you can write. We wanted to try to make it more towards that Hollywood style of setups and payoffs. Yeah, I think the most important thing that we wanted to focus in the story is the story itself and its message, the relationships, whether it's a relationship between each other or a relationship between itself and its external environment and so forth. And then the third one would be character, as in we wanted to make sure that there's character arcs, whether it's just Ella that's having the character arc or whether Cheeky eventually has one over the few videos and so forth. We had to make sure that there's character arcs for growth, make sure that there's relationships, because through relationships we connect and we understand each other. Not just people watching it, but the characters themselves, but we tend to connect more when we relate more. And story, because story is the message. And, I had a teacher that once said, story is king, and it's the most important thing and everything else will fall under it. And I think, you can use a character arc, but at the end of that whole character arc, even if it's a very character-based film, the point of the story is the message, and that still overrides the whole arc because the arc is the story in the end. So, yeah, those are probably the three big key elements that we had to make sure, even though it's a 3-minute film, we have to make sure we have these in there because, that's what makes a film. It's not just a beginning, middle, end. It's the growth. It's the change. It's, understanding their past to allow them to have growth in the future, right? And I wouldn't say I'm writing to the condition of the world, but I would say that's probably true. But like all films do this cyclic journey, the 360. Yeah, I call it the 360, right? We start off here, we go on a journey, the journey changes us, and then we get back to where we started, okay? And we return to that state, but as a changed person. So now we're going to see the everyday life that we had in a different light, which then makes us have a different, we call it new equilibrium, right? But you can't have a new equilibrium if you haven't gone on the journey to change, okay? It's ancient Greek style, like, writing, and we still use it today. There's no going around it, right? And I'm trying to think of the writer of the book, Joseph Campbell. He wanted to know how to write the perfect story, and he went and studied all these Greek tragedies and dramas and all that stuff, and he saw a consistency with all the stories that he was reading, and he figured out that there is a structure to stories, and it's that 360 structure. You know, I call it 360, but he calls it cyclic or something like that. But basically,
where the character goes full circle.
Goes full circle, yeah. So they have a flaw. They, you know, along the way, they learn little things that they take on, and others they push away. And then as they keep growing, the ones that they're pushing away, they start to accept. And then they can take on more, and they grow more. And now they shift their desire to actually wanting to help, or wanting to change, and wanting to grow, wanting to help others. And they get back to the beginning again, having changed themselves within, that then can contribute to that flawed self changing the environment that they have at the beginning again, right? And that's what I did with Ella. Well, that's the intention I'm doing with Ella, right? The empathy that I put into the character with her stuffing up her music at the beginning, the empathy there connects us to her. It gives us something that we relate to, that fear of like stage fright, or that fear of failing, or that fear of what if I'm not good enough, you know? That's such a universal thing that we can all understand. And I think that that's one of my favorite parts, even though it's so basic. You're like, oh, it's just that boring part. It's like, it's such a important part emotionally that I think people would skip over. And then the second part, obviously, I think everyone's favorite part in that thing is the connection when Ella and Cheeky meet, and they have this playful moment, and they actually create this bond, you know, and we see the bond be connected, only for it to, you know, go into drama. But I would say the empathy part of the character that we get to relate to with her fears, and then the bonding and friendship of her and Cheeky are my two favorite parts. And they're probably equal, because one's an emotional, internal thing, and the other one is a, you know, relationship kind of. So one's character and one's relationship in the story.